Hello and welcome to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to make a beholder animal orb from Castle Crashers. I have my reference picture on my phone and I've got some polyester fiber fill to use for the body. So the reason why I use polyester fiber fill is it's a lot cheaper than wool roving. So I'm going to bulk that up. And once I have a nice ball or orb shape, I'm going to go ahead and cover that with the brown wool roving. And I'm just using my 3-pronged needle felting tool. This works pretty well to apply it pretty fast with having some pretty good control. I do have one that has more needles, but I only use it on really big projects. So the next thing I'm doing after I've got the orb covered, I'm going to make its mouth. So the beholder from Castle Crashers, he's got this kind of rectangular jaw that hangs down. So I want to shape out and bulk up some brown wool roving. And then once I have that shaped, I'm going to add some black in the middle for his mouth opening. So I want to get it as proportionate as I can to my reference material. Make sure that looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and add the black. And I just want to get it all covered so you can't see any of the brown. I don't need to do any more than that because I don't want to bulk up that area. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it to the main part of the head. Make sure everything looks right. And the next thing I want to do is build up the mouth area. So I want it to have some depth. And this is where it gets tricky when you're taking a 2D picture that's very, not only is it it's a flat drawing, but the character itself looks very flat in the drawing, if that makes sense. But I want the mouth to have some depth, so I'm taking some wool roving and I'm just basically outlining the lower portion of the mouth, or the 3/4 of the mouth, and going around that so I have that depth. So when I put the teeth in there, they're kind of sitting back and they're not right there in front. Now the next thing I want to do is I was looking at the picture and he's got these little things on the side of his head, and so the best I could determine is there are some kind of like little fins, and so I'm gonna go ahead and cut out 6 pieces of wool roving, and I've kind of bulked it up first, and I'm gonna attach them, kind of overlap them so they're like little, almost like fish fins, and try to get those as symmetrical as I can, so that way it looks like as natural as possible for a fantasy creature made out of wool roving. So I've got them shaped out where they kind of go to a little bit of a point, and now I'm going to start placing them. So I'm just starting with the back one, and then I kind of layer it so it just slightly overlaps. And then I did the same thing on the other side. Now that I'm happy with that, even though he kind of looks like a weird spider creature at this point, but I think this will work. Now what I need to do is bulk up some wool roving into these like tubes to use for the eye stalks. Now the picture for the Castle Crashers Beholder Animal Orb has 4 eye stalks. Traditionally, Dungeons & Dragons beholders have 10, but since I'm doing the Castle Crasher one, I'm just going to do the 4. And because it's just this 2D drawing, maybe he actually has more in there, but you don't ever see him in anything other than that picture in the game because he's just a little character that follows you around. So I went ahead, rolled it out, and now I'm cutting it into 4 sections. And I want to make sure they're nice and solid and tight so they'll be able to stay upright on his head. Now once I have those done, I'm going to go ahead and attach them. So I just use my needle felting needle to stab around the base of it, and I go all the way around, and I'm going to do that for all 4 of them. So I kind of just did them so they're not in a straight line. They look pretty much in a straight line in the picture, but I want them to have some depths. Now the next thing I want to do is do his eyeballs for the eye stalks. So I'm using my heat gun on low. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want to burn the Worbla. and discolor it. Since I'm using white and I'm not painting it, I want to make sure it stays white. Now, using the low setting works fine. It just takes a little bit longer, but it still gets hot enough. Now, these seem to be about the right size. I've got 4 of them made up. So the next thing we're going to do is make his teeth. So I just matched it up with the drawing where I'm doing 3 teeth. Now, I do want them to be flat, but I want them to have some depth. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and use 2, it's going to be 2 sheets thick. So I'm just basically cutting around my first one onto another sheet, get the teeth all shaped out, and now I'm going to go ahead and heat this up to bond those 2 layers together and smooth it so it looks just like one thicker piece of Worbla for the teeth. Touch it up, make sure it looks good, and we'll go ahead and I'm going to set this aside once it's trimmed up and start working on the main center eye. So I'm getting everything else out of the way. I'm going to heat up these little pieces of Worbla. Get this all shaped up. That wasn't quite enough, so I cut out some more. I'm going to heat this up, and I'm going to bulk that up into one bigger eye. I pushed it down so it's more like a dome shape. Then I'm going to cut out some black Worbla, just a little bit thicker, or so it's a little, it gives like a border around the eye. Going to heat that up and press my eyeball dome into that. I want to make sure my edges look good. Don't want it to have like rough, like it's cut. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's kind of a not quite a smooth drawing. I went ahead and made a pupil out of black Worbla. Now I'm just cutting some little pieces of red Worbla to do some veins. The drawing did show a few veins on the eyeball, so I wanted to kind of replicate that. And I do have some wet red Worbla, so that worked out perfect. Now with that all done, I'm really happy with how that looks. Everything looks like it's going to fit perfect. So the next thing I need to do is do the pupils on the smaller eyeballs. So I'm just cutting little pieces of black Worbla, heating it up, roll them out into little balls, and then I'll press them into the eyeballs. So these are all done. I'm not doing any veins on these. And now the last step is to glue everything. I'm using Loctite super glue gel. The reason why I use super glue gel is because if you put it on the wool roving, it will sit on the surface. If you use regular super glue, it's going to soak in. So the gel works really well for this. Alright, so I'm really happy with how this guys turned out. I'll get my desk cleaned off. We're going to look at the final Beholder Castle Crasher's Animal Orb. Alright. Now, I was looking at this guy and I'm like, he looks really ugly. But then I'm looking at my reference picture and I'm like, well, the reference picture is pretty ugly too. So I think I succeeded. He's not my favorite beholder I've done. I've actually done another beholder out of polymer clay. I did this guy about 7 years ago. And he's, more of a traditional D&D beholder. So I would like to go back and do another D&D beholder, but maybe make him more realistic and a lot bigger out of Worbla and paint it. So that's in my mental to-do list. I've had that thought for a while, so it's just a matter of, hopefully someday I'll get around to it. But anyways, this is my finished Beholder Animal Orb from Castle Crashers made out of felted wool. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please give it a like down below. If you have ideas for future videos, please leave it in the comments down below. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, never stop creating. Bye!